it not be nice if you could see music as others can see colors? And I think there are some people, you throw them any complex chord and they can immediately see the relationship and intervals within. It's really mind-blowing. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to become one of them, and I'm certainly not one of them. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have that superpower, but at the end, nothing goes without practicing. But maybe you are one of them who actually has that ability and just doesn't know it yet, or doesn't have the right tool or understanding to get there. Everything can be trained to a certain degree. Imagine you could just think of a melody or a chord and just play it like that, without thinking about the right intervals or in which key you are. Think about it. What is astonishing is that we do that all the time. If you go into the shower and sing your favorite song, you do exactly like that. You don't think about any chord or the intervals of your melody or in which key you are. You just do it. Not saying that it's always correct, but it's something you do without thinking. In a way, we do it. We memorize the melody, but in a completely different way as you would just if you sit down and try to memorize actively, because we love it so much that it's just there. It just goes in. And of course, good composers also know what they do. It's like an athlete who doesn't have to think about the right angle, the right amount of force or the trajectory of the ball. It's trained in a way, but it's more like it's muscle memory. When I went to music school as a small boy to learn the guitar, there was another girl. She was older than me, another student, and she was blind from birth. But she played the guitar phenomenal. It was amazing. She memorized everything. She was playing like a whole concert during one of these like parents music school concerts where all the parents come together to listen to their kids. And she played a whole concert. Guitar concert solo, and I was just so amazed and blown away because I could not grasp how that actually works. I was just couldn't understand how this works, how it works to first of all have all these like very, very difficult finger combinations and movement, but also not be able to look at it, and then memorizing a whole guitar concert. It was just out of this world. Later I realized that I need to shift my perspective quite a lot to be able to understand what was actually happening, because she looked at things obviously in a complete different way. Or looking is not the right word, of course. She could hear the colors. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm getting better. And also realizing that, yes, muscle memory is one thing, but ear training is probably the king when it comes to your music ability. If you really want to become a better musician, then ear training, and in particular interval training, is you have to do it. There's no way around. You see, I did a video quite a while ago where I tried to explain exercises on how we coordinate the left and the right hand on your kalimba, doing the same thing simultaneously with both hands, and then do different things simultaneously on the kalimba. The whole idea was how can we coordinate, how can we synchronize the brain with the movement of your hands. The video also tried to give you ideas on how you could start exercising with your instrument without any sheet music or thinking about chords, just by trying to coordinate the movement. What we didn't do back then was, how can we coordinate the ear with the instrument? What do we actually hear, and how actively we can hear different intervals? And that's what I want to talk about in this video. Okay, let's do this. Ear training is crucial in order for you to become a better musician. Really great jazz guitarists, they can hear, they can sing a melody and play it right away. And this ability allows you to learn melodies and music much faster without spending too much time on sheet music and theory in general. You will not need to look. You can concentrate only on the music rather than which note is now here and here. You just hear it and you play it. But in order to get there, we need to look at it a bit more closer. Ear training, in fact, can be very simple. There are apps for that, which, you can test. You can test your ability of hearing different intervals. It's great. What they don't do is, as with everything, they don't explain you why and how and what's going on in the background. I want to keep it simple, but I want to go slightly deeper than just the typical classical music theory lessons where it says a minor third is sad and the major third is funny. Sad or funny. It's actually not true. It really depends on the context, on the speed, on the style of music. For example, gypsy jazz is predominantly written in minor tunes, but it's not a sad music, most of the time at least. If you just recently bought a Kalimba, then the chance is very high that you got something like this. This is a diatonic Kalimba tuned in equal temperament, which is the modern tuning system, at least within the Western tradition. That's something you are very used to because it's in pretty much anything you hear on the radio, I guess, is based on that tuning system. Diatonic means it's tuned in a certain key and it's missing some of the tones which would be in a chromatic kalimba. And it has 7 tones and it's tuned in C major. And now you say, hey, but why you have 17 tongues here? It's not 7 notes. Yes, that's true, but it's because some of the notes are doubled, as in octaves. So for example, it starts with C. And C is not just here once, it's actually there on the kalimba 3 times. It's just the octave of it and then the octave of the octave. This is for most of these tones. Some of them have 2 octaves and some of them have only 1. So for example, the D has 2 octaves. The E has 2 octaves. Then we have the F. That has only 1 octave. G has 1 octave. A has 1 octave. B has 1 octave. And then we're back on the C. And that gives us all the 17 tongues here. Now, what is equal temperament? Equal temperament is a tuning system invented to kind of liberate music. Without it, a lot of things were not possible. But it is an approximation of a much purer system, which is based on just intonation. Just intonation is based on very pure ratios. For example, if I have a string and I divide the string in half, the string as a whole would sound in a certain tone, like C. And if I just half the string, then it would be the octave of that tone. It's another C, but it's just double the speed. But basically half the length doubles the speed of the vibration of that string. The problem is it has limitations when it comes to complex chords and melodies, and there's so much more possible with an equal temperament. Don't get me wrong, I love the equal temperament system. Everybody uses it because it's just so liberating in terms of what you can do with it. And a lot of music wouldn't be possible. Jazz, the classical music would not be possible. Mozart would not be possible if we would not have the equal temperament system. The only problem I see with the equal temperament system is that it kind of camouflages the origin and the history of where our music actually, our musical understanding and systems actually come from. And let's dive in that a bit deeper with the kalimba. The kalimba is also tuned in equal temperament, but I think to learn about ratios and to learn about the different intervals and why they are, what is their nature and quality, it's good to look at the just intonation a little bit. It's gonna be not that difficult. Trust me. It's very easy to grasp, and it will open quite a lot of understanding you might have missed. Imagine sound is a three-dimensional wave which vibrates very rapidly and changes the air pressure. And one cycle of the wave builds up the air pressure, it goes neutral, and then decreases the air pressure. That's one cycle of that, of one wave. And for example, the standard tuning of A is 440 hertz. That means 440 times you have that wave within 1 second. The C on the other hand, our C here, the middle C, the wave frequency or the hertz is 261.63. It's not a really number to remember, but that's how it's defined as the middle C. And my octave would then be just the double of that. And now an interval is actually very simple. It's if two waves are coming together with different frequencies, different speeds. So I have one wave which is like this, and the other one is like this. The one is deeper, the one is which is slower, versus the one which has more waves within. It's just higher. Just to simplify the whole understanding, we will just compare, for now, we'll just compare the root node with the rest of what we have here. With these two different waves, we could talk about ratios. How compares the one with the other? The most simplest ratio is 2 to 1 or 1 to 2. Imagine C is 1. What would be 2 to 1? This has, let's make it simple and say this has 200 hertz. Then how would we compare that? It would be times 2, 400 hertz, which is then, it's the octave when we double the frequency of the wave. And then if we double it again, then we get this C here. So this is the simplest ratio. What about the others? So in order to understand the quality or the color of the note, of the different intervals, the quality and what you can do with it, and also to start to hear it, we could argue that the more frequent or the more faster two waves overlap at their end of cycle. Now, if you have a different frequency, then they don't overlap. They overlap sometimes in a certain pattern. The faster they overlap, the more frequent, the more often they overlap, the more harmonious these intervals are. So this is going to be a bit tricky, but this is how the trickiest it gets. This is the most difficult it gets, and then we can actually move on in order to do some exercise. But bear with me for one more moment. Look, this has a certain frequency. It's a wave which starts, it ends, and then continues. Now, if I add a different interval on top of it, a different note on top of it, for example, I add the E. The E has a different frequency, so the end of the cycle does not overlap with the end of the cycle of C. And then the question is, how often do I need to fit the E cycle, the second wave cycle in order to match the end of the cycle of the first one? The more frequent these two waves overlap, the more harmonious it sounds. So in case of my octave, which is the simplest ratio, it's 2 to 1. In that way, we could now look at another ratio. What would be another ratio? What is the next simplest ratio really? Is 3 to 1. Do you know any simpler ratio? No. The problem with 3 to 1 is that 3 would be higher than the octave, right? So in that case, I'm telling you what it is. It's G. A ratio of 3 to 1 would mean the G above the octave of C. That would be this ratio, 3:1. In order to bring it back into my first octave, I just transpose it down, and the resulting ratio is 3:2. The C and the G is the second simplest interval in terms of harmonious it sounds. The octave, that's pretty harmonious. You almost cannot hear it, but there's a second note in there. And then when we use the G, that's also the power chord in rock, metal, and so on. And we could combine it, of course, with the octave C. In classic modern tradition, it's also called the perfect fifth. Now you know maybe why it's called perfect. It's because it's just the perfect harmony. So there's a perfect octave, there's a perfect fifth. There's another interval which is almost the same, and it's very, very similar in its nature, but it's also completely the opposite. We could take the ratio 3:2 and just invert it, and we have 2:3. That would mean the note which I'm adding is lower than the C. If 3 is now my C, 2:3, right? The note I'm talking about is F. We don't have an F which is lower than our root. So we could also modify that ratio and say it's 4:3. It's a very nice ratio if we look at that as a rectangle, 4:3. By the way, 2:3 is a modern ratio for images, and so that's quite astonishing. And a long time, 4:3 was a widely used ratio for photos. So again, would then have 4:3. It's very similar. It's the inverse of the perfect fifth. It's the perfect fourth. But it's also funny is that C is the perfect fifth of the F. So the interval F to C, if C is on the top, is the same as C to G. So we have the perfect octave, we have the perfect fifth, and we have the perfect fourth. And they are profoundly useful. It's widely used in classical music. And I'm telling you why. Imagine that the fifth always pushes to the root. Well, now you could say, okay, especially if I make a chord out of it. So I'm playing a C major chord. There's actually the fifth already included, right? The perfect fifth. Now, if I look at the C as a fifth of F, it's actually pushing to the F. But it becomes a bit unsettling. If we want to go back to our root, we just go to G major, the G chord. That pulls us back to C. These are the three perfect intervals. The perfect octave, the perfect fifth, and the perfect fourth. Now the next most simplest interval is the major six. Major six. So we have, when we talk about intervals, we have perfect intervals, and we have major and minor, and then we have diminished and augmented. The major six is actually an oddball here, but it is the A. The ratio is 5. It's 5:3. So F was 4:3, and A is 5:3. If we invert that, if we flip it around, we have the A on the lower end and C above. Then this is also a minor third. In terms of ratio, it would be 5:6. There is another interval which is actually more simpler than the A minor, or the minor third interval. The major third is an interval of 5 to 4. That would be C and E. In contrast to the perfect intervals, which is the octave, the fifth, and the fourth, the major and minor third are very, very different. They're very different. You could argue these are the notes which makes a piece sad or not sad, which is kind of in other languages you actually talk about the gender of a chord. When you look at chord names, the first thing you distinguish is it minor or is it major. The perfect fifth and perfect fourth are more neutral. So the major third and minor third are super important in that sense. And they are, for me, in between dissonance and harmonious. They give the life to any chord. I almost forgot that the major third inverted is actually minor 6, which is not available within the C major scale. But if we look at the A minor, which is the same notes, in the relation of the A to its sixth is actually minor 6 relation. Meaning that if I use A as a root note, then the sixth of my A key, my A minor key, is a minor 6. Actually, from the C major perspective, we only have two intervals left. There's two types of intervals. One is the major second, and the B, which is the major seventh. Let's stick with the major second for a bit. They are closer together, but they are actually further away from each other in terms of the ratio. We need 8 cycles to match the same frequency of 9 cycles with the D. This is the major second, and the ratio is 9 to 8. If I flip that, then I have a ratio of 8 to 9. It's also a minor 7th. The minor 7th is not included in the C major scale. It's included in A minor scale, or it's included in the G Mixolydian scale. I hope you can still follow. We're almost done. There's one more interval in the C major scale, which is C and B. And this is the most dissonant interval within the C major scale. It's just a half step away. If I would play now, and you can hear it if I play the inverse function, or if I play the inverted version of it, which is a minor second, a half step away. This is the most dissonant, and you can really hear it. The ratio would be 8 to 15. If I play, however, the octave of C, which sounds much more dissonant, the ratio is 16 to 15. Same notes, just different arranged, create different dissonance. It also has a reason that they're further away from each other in terms of the pitch. The further away a note is in terms of pitch, the less obvious is the dissonance of the two notes. C and B played like this, and C and B played like this. Quite a difference. And you can hear it. If I now put the chord together, it's all laid out on the Kalimba very, very easily. Here I have the root note, C. I have the third, which gives me the main ingredient of a chord's gender. It's either minor or major or minor. And then the fifth is kind of neutral. And the seventh, although very dissonant, if I play it like this, it sounds very harmonious as a C major 7 chord as it appears, for example, in jazz music. I used that chord when I recorded my cover for Say So from Doja Cat. She used that chord.